Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is education. On the conversation on education, I want to talk about the education that starts at home. And today I want to talk about the education around emotional expression. So a lot of us, especially if you grew up in North America, but I think it's pretty much the same across the board, there's a lot of taboo that we encounter when it comes to emotional expression. So a lot of us are taught that our emotions, for several different reasons, just don't have a place, right? And so it creates this disconnect because we don't understand how it is the case that we experience these big emotions that seem to be the reason why we're not able to connect and to build relationships with other people if they feel repelled by our emotions. And I think that generally speaking in our culture, in the culture that I grew up in Canada, there's a certain degree of discomfort with emotional expression. And so for me, there was this one leadership test that I did, and on the spectrum of expression of emotional expressiveness, I'm at the extreme, which is interesting for a lot of people who have known me throughout my life, because a lot of my conditioning growing up was to not be expressive emotionally. First and foremost, because as a child, you're taught in my culture, my parents' culture anyway, that children are meant to be seen and not heard. And while my parents gave me much more flexibility, there's a lot more bandwidth for my emotional expression just because of how big my emotions were. I mean, I was able to get that validation at least in my early pre-teen years, because I recognized that that was just who I was. I was just this emotional human being. But I ended up learning just in life, as part of the social contract, that there was a certain level of emotional expression that created discomfort in other people. And if you're making other people uncomfortable, then it's better to just not express your emotions. And so I became very guarded about my emotions. I became very insecure about the emotions that I was experiencing. And so the way that I handled that is I shut them down. And so in my early 20s, when I started out my career, a lot of my feedback, actually the feedback, the development feedback that I received, was to be more expressive. And it was an interesting shift because I got so good at repressing and at containing my emotions that it got to the point where people were like, okay, Rochelle, are you a robot? We don't get any emotional response from you. What is the emotion behind your communication? We need to have that human piece. And so it was a journey, right? Because you start off feeling as though your emotions are too big for everyone. You start feeling shame and different types of emotions around your emotions. And so you get good at hiding them. And then now people want to peek. They want to see, who are you? What's your emotional footprint look like? And so I did do a video when I started out this channel on your emotional footprint. And I think each of us have a different emotional footprint. Each of us has a different wheelhouse of emotions that we experience on a day-to-day basis. And so for me, because I experience emotions fairly strongly, my journey in my early 20s up until now was what's the appropriate level of emotional expression? And reading the room really helped with that. And it's not about suppressing my emotions, which is what I first did when I felt like I didn't have the tools to express them effectively. It's about expressing them effectively by matching the energy in the room as well. And also recognizing that there's a demarcation between the emotion you experience and the emotion and the way that you have those emotions translate in behavior. I think that a lot of us feel a lot of shame in our emotions because we demonize the emotion and not the behavior that can sometimes be what creates distance and discomfort. So I am someone who you'll frequently hear me saying, feel your feelings. And I fundamentally believe that everyone, whatever emotion that you're feeling, I will always hold space for your emotions. You're never going to have me tell you that I don't have the bandwidth to experience your emotion with you. But where I do have boundaries is if that expression in and of itself is offensive, or if it's insulting, or if it's disrespectful to me or anyone else in the environment. But the emotion itself, I hold space for people's emotions. I express myself emotionally in such a way where I'm hoping that people can behave in kind, can hold space for my emotions as well. But it's a journey, right? It's a journey. And so there's little things that I do to make sure that I give myself the wiggle room to be emotionally expressive. A lot of the times if I'm being emotionally expressive, if I'm expressing frustration, I do so with objectivity. I make a point to not be insulting, to not be demeaning, to not be disrespectful in the message in and of itself. But I think that the frustration may or may not come across, is still working on that, but also working on figuring out what the balance of emotions and beliefs are around that, because I believe now and that emotional expression is important. I think it's important that we bring our whole selves to all the environments that we're in, and I think that we have to do trial by error. We need to figure out like what kind of expression is appropriate for this setting, like given the culture of the spaces that we're in, like how do we want to tailor our emotional expression in these spaces, but not dim the emotion itself. And so I want to talk a little bit of emotional expression, because a lot of us, I think, are uncomfortable with our emotions because we've experienced discomfort with our emotional expression. And so I want us to think about, well, how can I play around with the ways that I express specific emotions so that I can have the space to experience the emotion but not create discomfort in other people. And I think that that's a better journey to walk down, because it gives you the opportunity to maintain that inner integrity, have your whole self show up in all the spaces that you're in, your mental, your emotional, your spiritual, but then you think about just the translation of those emotions, the translation of your inner states. And that is something that will evolve with time, with maturity, and with experience. And I have to say that the way that I express myself emotionally now is leaps and spades away from how I did it years ago, but that's only because emotional maturity comes with practice. We're not born emotionally mature. And when I think about emotional maturity, I think about developing the dexterity to translate our emotions in the ways that are appropriate for the settings that we're in. And the settings that we're in will always shift and change. It's never going to be a one size fits all by way of how we express ourselves emotionally. I think that we need to really think about the impact that we're having on the people around us, and we want to think about the relationships that we're hoping to maintain, like post that expression in and of itself. Like, there are different factors that go into emotional expression. And so I'm also someone who is a fairly direct person. I'm a direct communicator, and so I've recognized that I get more direct and more succinct when it is the case that I'm balancing frustration with my communication. And sometimes that can read as like angrier or more frustrated than I actually am. So I think that it's a dance. It's a dance that I'll be dancing my whole life. Like, I think that the balance is always going to shift and change because it's based on the people that you're interacting with, right? Emotional expression isn't in a vacuum. You're balancing your emotions off of other people. Like, you're expressing it, and that expression in and of itself is creating expressions in other people. And I think that that in and of itself is beautiful. Like, if everyone feels safe to be emotionally expressive, I think that that is a very beautiful synergetic thing. But if one person's being expressive and the other person feels subdued and subjugated and doesn't feel like they have the opportunity to be expressive, then that can be a really uncomfortable experience. And so I am someone who fundamentally believes that psychological safety starts with everyone feeling like they have the space to be emotionally expressive, to express their emotions, and to also be given the grace that if they do it wrong, if they fumble, if they make a mistake, that they're going to be met with forgiveness, they're going to be met with grace, that people are not going to condemn them for it. It's a work in progress, and we're all learning and growing, but I think that it's important that we're giving ourselves a chance to adapt, to learn, to grow, to evolve in the way that we express ourselves emotionally, because again, the emotions, we all experience them. All of us have our own wheelhouse of emotions. Those emotions are not going to go away. We cultivate dexterity, we cultivate mastery with the expression of those emotions. And so you're never going to get masterful, or you're never going to be an expert at how you navigate and manage your emotions and build that emotional intelligence if you're not using your emotions and figuring out like how best to manage your emotions in situations where tensions are high, or how best to express your emotional boundaries in situations where you feel like they're being crossed. Like, these are practices that enable us to all cultivate and to evolve our emotional intelligence. And so I think that it's really important. I think a lot of us have dealt with shame, have dealt with judgment, have dealt with condemnation when it comes to our emotions, and it can make us feel uncomfortable or really unsure about how we can go about expressing our emotions and still feel accepted. We can't control the factors and the ways people respond to us, but we can be mindful and intentional about how we express ourselves and how we show up, making a point to be integrated in the way that we show up. So never just showing up with our logical selves, turning off our emotional selves. I think that it's so important that we give ourselves the space and to make sure that we find ourselves in spaces where we can be our whole selves, our emotional, cerebral selves, and that those two together work really well for the spaces and places that we navigate through. So that was the topic of conversation for today. Some food for thought for you. If I've piqued your interest, then definitely join in. We do do host live events at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future on our website. So definitely tune into those conversations. Now, these events are paid events, so if you do see yourself participating in our community on an ongoing basis, so we do also have package plans, so check those out as well. We offer parent-child workshops, so leadership, I do believe, starts at a young age. It starts with children, so we do provide that fundamental that foundation, focusing on cultivating self-concept, autonomy, self-efficacy, and compassion as the pillars of leadership in juvenescence, in young. And I think that if we cultivate those pillars, then we can be our own leaders in the spaces and places we find ourselves in as we grow up, by cultivating that sense of inner confidence and leveraging our voices in the spaces and places that are in alignment with our own sense of purpose. So that's the conversation for today. Some food for thought for you. If you would like to give us some feedback, if you would like to talk about your journey as it relates to emotional expression, how you figured out how you can experience and hold space for your emotions and create psychological safety even within yourself to experience those emotions, and then how you found yourself in spaces that gave you the grace and the space to emotionally express and to figure it out, to learn the best ways of expressing yourselves, because it's a journey. None of us are going to get it right every single time, but if you don't start somewhere, then it's hard to have that evolution happen. So that's my feedback for you. Express yourself emotionally as often and as frequently as you feel those emotions. Figure out what kind of expression best suits the environment that you're in. And if you're still here, follow us. Leave us a like. Every like does count. Give us an opportunity to play a small role in your journey. We're on the road to 1K. And if you follow us across all of our social media platforms, we are so thankful for every ounce of support. Thank you so much again, and we'll talk to you all very soon.